I remember sitting down across from him after all these years and feeling that familiar rhythm of conversation settle back in before we even really got going. It's funny how time just disappears when you reconnect with someone who's cut from the same cloth, even when you haven't seen each other since that day outside the ice house, or maybe back when he came up to the studio in the hills. I remember that truck he pulled up in, that Land Cruiser with the LS swap, clean, loud, and very much his style. It hit me right away how much life had flown by since all that. When you're young, you think time drags forever. But then you hit a point where you look up, you're older, comfortable, happy, and somehow the years slip past like they're trying to outrun you. We laughed about that. The way a school year used to feel like an eternity. How waiting 2 months for Christmas felt unbearable, and now you blink and 2 months vanish. There's something strange about that relativity. I've always thought about it like the drive from LA to San Francisco. The first time it feels endless, the 50th time it's a casual cruise. Life works the same way. You normalize it, even appreciate it, but every now and then you catch yourself wishing you could slow it down just a little. But it doesn't slow down for anybody. All you can do is try to be present enough to catch the good parts on the fly. We started talking about that idea people have after some near-death moment where they swear they're going to change everything. They say they'll appreciate life, they'll stop taking things for granted, they'll start paying attention, but most people don't change. I've met a few who really did transform themselves afterward, but for the most part, people are who they've always been. Change takes introspection. It takes the ability to face your own bullshit straight on and call yourself out. Most people aren't built for that. They've never had the discipline, never had the habit of correcting course. So when something huge happens, they say the words, but they don't follow through. And that's something I've seen over and over again, this disconnect between what people want to be and what they're actually willing to do. Growing up being coached constantly probably helped shape both of us more than we realized at the time. Coaches didn't sugarcoat anything. They called you out because they wanted you to get better. They yelled because they cared. I got used to that. I never took it as criticism. I took it as information, direction, even when it was harsh, even when it hurt. That's something I think gets lost on a lot of young people now. It's like they're allergic to someone telling them they're wrong. They externalize everything, blame the world, blame the system, blame society, blame everyone but themselves. They don't understand that listening, really listening, especially when it's uncomfortable, is the doorway to improvement. Whether it's jujitsu or comedy or learning a language or mastering an instrument, the skill isn't the only thing you get out of it. You get the deeper understanding that you can improve through effort, you can evolve through consistency, you can transform through discipline, and once you understand that, you can apply it anywhere in life. If you never learn that, you get stuck, permanently stuck. And a lot of people are stuck, not because they're lazy, but because they never found their thing. They don't have a craft or a trade or an area of expertise that anchors them. We forget that many people don't have anything in their life they can call a true skill. They didn't stumble on a passion early. No one pushed them, and they never push themselves. So they walk around full of insecurity without even recognizing that's what it is. And when you don't have a skill, you don't have proof that you're capable. You don't have that internal, I know what I'm good at, and I've earned that foundation. Without it, every interaction becomes a threat. Every bit of criticism feels like an attack. Every challenge feels overwhelming. I can't imagine living like that, never having that anchor. When I meet young people and ask what they're into, it kills me when they shrug and say they don't know. They play video games, they watch Netflix, they scroll, but there's no spark, no curiosity, no exploration. And the problem with video games, besides the fact they're engineered to hold you in them, is that they simulate achievement without giving you real achievement. They hijack the reward center. You feel satisfied without actually accomplishing anything unless you're one of those elite pros making insane money on Twitch or in competitive gaming. And that was another funny thing we talked about, how the old rule that video games were a waste of time doesn't really work anymore. You can't tell a kid he's wasting time gaming when some Finnish StarCraft legend is pulling $1.8 million in winnings, but still, that's the top of the top. Most people playing aren't getting anywhere. It's just too easy to sink time into something that gives you the signal of accomplishment without the substance. That might be the most dangerous kind of addiction. I've always believed that part of the problem with education is that school doesn't expose you to the possibilities of what you could love. They just teach everyone the same generic subjects, the same standardized tests, and they never ask the right questions. No teacher ever looked at me and said, "You're funny, you should think about being a comedian." In fact, teachers mostly told me to shut up. That was the pattern. Shut up, stop disrupting, be quiet. Meanwhile, at the end of the year, they hand out an award for class clown, so what is it? Shut up or speak up? Kids get mixed messages, and the teachers giving those orders, God bless the good ones, but a lot of them wound up in the profession not because they were passionate about unlocking kids' potential, but because they wanted stability, safety, a reliable paycheck. There's nothing wrong with that, but you can't expect a person who has settled to inspire ambition in others. Most of my teachers were miserable. Not all, but most. And that environment crushes creativity instead of guiding it. We moved from that into how we both kind of stumbled into our paths organically. Nobody told either of us to do comedy. Nobody guided us toward the things we eventually fell in love with. He told me about the first time someone suggested he become a comedian, one of the guys from his fighting circles. He would joke on buses on the way to tournaments, trying to distract everyone from the fear of getting kicked in the head later that day, and that guy, Steve, said, "You should do stand-up." He didn't believe it at first. Most of us don't when we're young. You think being a comedian means being Jerry Seinfeld from day one. You don't realize everyone starts terrible. But once he went to an open mic night and saw how bad everyone was, he realized, wait, I can do this. It was the same for me in a different way. I used to listen to morning radio and think, I can do better than that. That's the beauty of mediocrity. It inspires people. Excellence can inspire from far away. But beginners need to see something attainable. If your first exposure to basketball is Michael Jordan in his prime, you think, well, I'll never be that. But if you see someone your level playing pickup, you step on the court. That's how everything works. We got into this long tangent about fighting, coaching, technique, natural gifts, rhythm, fast twitch muscle, all of it. Some people have better coaching early on. Some people have better genetics. Some people understand the rhythm of movement on a level you can't teach, but most importantly, some people have the right instruction. Bad coaching ruins potential. Great coaching elevates it, and it's funny how many legendary coaches weren't great fighters themselves. Emmanuel Stewart, Freddie Roach, both extraordinarily successful trainers without being dominant champions. It's not about being the best at something. It's about being able to communicate how to do it. Teaching is its own art. That took us into the whole conversation about cheating in sports, like in MMA, where guys grease up with baby oil the night before, thinking they're clever because the oil only reappears when they sweat. People forget. Cheating isn't a result of immorality, it's a result of competitiveness. The more competitive the world, the more people will do anything to get an edge. That's true in fighting, in cycling, in F1 racing, in baseball. The Balco scandal popped up in conversation. Victor Conte, Barry Bonds, The Clear. We joked about how baseball is the most self-righteous of all sports about steroids. They treat baseball like this sacred American holy ground, and God forbid anyone tarnish it. Meanwhile, most of us knew a long time before the scandals that something was going on. But that outrage, Billy Crystal, Bob Costas, all those guys talking about the sanctity of baseball, its theatrical baseball, for me at least, was never the toughest sport. I loved playing it, but let's be real. Football was war. Wrestling was misery. Baseball was joy by comparison. Football practice is truly brutal. 10 years of never touching a football, never understanding the game from a glamour standpoint because I was just smashing into people or trying to tackle someone else smashing into me and wrestling. God, wrestling was hard, running bleachers, cutting weight, carrying teammates on your shoulders while doing laps, pure suffering. But it teaches you something nothing else in life does. It calibrates you. It gives you a baseline of misery so that everything after feels doable. I don't think people who never had to work in the heat, never had to grind through a physically miserable job, or never had to get yelled at all day long in sports, understand how much that shapes your threshold for difficulty. That led us right back into the idea of calibration. I'll never view comedy as hard work. At its absolute worst, it's still air-conditioned, fun, full of laughs and beers. But I've had conversations with people who grew up with office jobs, comfortable environments, and for them, An extra show in a weekend is overwhelming. It's all relative. It's all based on your past. And once again, it circles back to the idea that hardship, real hardship, creates resilience, comfort creates fragility. When we talked about fighting again, I said the biggest advantage isn't knowing how to punch. It's being comfortable with someone trying to punch you. That's what changes your psychology. You don't panic. You don't freeze. You know how to stay calm. And in life, that's the advantage people with hard backgrounds have. They don't freak out at the first sign of trouble. They've already endured worse. At one point, I remembered something crazy from when I was younger, training and fighting. I used to resent the fact that sex felt good. I was so hyper-focused on discipline and edge and toughness that anything pleasurable felt like a weakness. I thought enjoying things was soft. I didn't want softness. I wanted hunger, grit. I wanted to be razor-focused. Looking back, it's insane, but it shows how extreme you can get when you're young and obsessed with winning. I never stopped having sex, but I felt guilty about liking it, which tells you how warped a competitor's mind can get. We laughed about that, and then drifted into the idea that misery becomes a kind of currency as you get older. Once you've spent your younger years suffering through football drills, construction sites, hot summers with no water, and people yelling at you nonstop, everything else feels easy. Comedy, travel, performing, it all seems like a luxury cruise compared to that. And misery isn't just useful for perspective, it's useful for identity. It shapes toughness, and it shapes the dynamic in families too. The youngest brother is almost always the toughest because he's been tormented the longest. That became a running joke, how the Baldwin brothers or any group of brothers probably beat the hell out of each other growing up, and how hierarchy emerges. People don't realize that toughness, real toughness, has roots. We covered so much ground that it almost felt like a journey through every piece of what makes a person who they are. Expertise, insecurity, grit, humor, mentorship, hardship, passion, failure, discovery, they all tie together, and underneath it all was this recurring truth we kept landing on. Most people never find the thing that ignites them. They never find the path that feels like it's theirs, because nobody introduces them to it, and they never stumble across it on their own. They end up drifting through life without a real sense of mastery, caught in comparison, insecurity, and the weird emptiness that comes from not knowing what you're built for. And at the same time, the world has changed so much that even the old advice, get a real job, don't waste time, doesn't fully apply anymore. When we were growing up, you couldn't tell your parents you wanted to do a podcast. That sounded insane. But now, people make millions on Twitch playing video games, talking to a camera, opening toys, streaming commentary. The whole landscape exploded in ways nobody predicted. CNN didn't even realize how massive podcasts had gotten. They underestimated the entire medium. When they tried to smear ivermectin by calling it horse dewormer, they thought their institutional weight would overshadow anything else. They didn't realize a guy in a room with a microphone and a friend named Jamie could outperform them, outrank them, and out-truth them. And they took an L because of their arrogance. That whole ivermectin situation spun into this huge reflection on media integrity. They called something that won a Nobel Prize a horse dewormer because it fit the narrative. The stupidity of that still blows my mind. A news network sacrificing credibility for a cheap shot, assuming they'd get away with it like they always had. They didn't understand the shift. They didn't realize podcasts had become the new public square. And instead of owning the truth, they doubled down. I could have sued them. Easily. But speaking openly did more than any lawsuit could. They gambled with their integrity, and for what? A headline? A momentary jab? They jeopardized their future just to avoid admitting they were wrong. That brought us to a bigger analogy about old guard industries. Automotive giants laughing at Toyota and Datsun until they got overtaken. Legacy media ignoring new voices until it was too late. Complacency kills giants. And new mediums thrive because they're built on authenticity, adaptability, and actual curiosity, not bureaucracy. And somewhere woven through all of it was this ongoing conversation about human potential. How much is nature? How much is nurture? How much is effort? How much is luck? Some people have horsepower in their brain, others don't. That's just reality. Some people never get exposed to the thing that might light them up. Also reality. Some people get bad instruction. Some people get sheltered. Some get broken early. some get no guidance at all. The human condition is a mess of variables, and the outcome depends on everything from your parents to your teachers to the random hobbies you stumble into as a kid. Looking back on all of it, the ridiculous turns, the deep dives, the jokes, the memories, the frustrations, the insights, it felt less like an interview and more like two lives comparing notes, two guys who found their paths by accident, who fought their way through confusion, who were shaped by misery and coaching and failure and obsession, two guys who stumbled into success through passion, hard work, timing, and the refusal to settle into something that didn't feel like theirs. And underneath everything we talked about was this idea that life is short, unpredictable, unforgiving, and at the same time filled with opportunities for transformation. You get one shot to figure out what you're supposed to be, one chance to craft a skill you can own, one chance to stop blaming the world and start shaping your place in it. The whole conversation felt like an exploration of what it means to grow up, to evolve, to fight through insecurity, to survive institutions that don't always nurture you, to carve out a life that feels genuinely yours, to appreciate change, to embrace discipline, to respect hardship, and to understand that nothing, no gift, no success, no identity comes without struggle. And when the mics finally went off, I realized that's the real theme of almost every meaningful conversation I've ever had on this show, the journey of becoming yourself.